Ladies and gentlemen, hello, this is Debo over at Land Say Go. I appreciate you guys coming out and checking out the spoiler video here. We have a bit of a catch-up day today. We missed a few days due to personal things, so we have Friday over the weekend and today's Monday video. We're all going to do that jam-packed into one. We're just going to focus on some of the more impactful cards as well as the rares and mythics, etc. And so hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Let's go ahead and break it on down. Fabro Elder is 1 green and a white for a 0/0 Tree Folk Druid with Vigilance. And he gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control. So it already comes in as a 2/2 for 3. And then, excuse me, if you're running 5 colors, it can become a 5/5. And then you can tap it, and for each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So you can tap for Wooburg, you can tap for 4 colors, 3 colors, 2 colors. It's a very powerful card. The fact that it has Vigilance allows you to cast it, or to tap its ability at the end of turn, or on the second main phase after attacks. I think it's pretty good, and I think it should be something you should look out for, especially in something that wants to be running like multicolor ramp. It's definitely a good contender. Stone Coil Serpent for X. We have a 0/0 artifact creature snake. Has reach, trample, protection for multicolored, and then it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. We've seen lesser cards like this be good. The fact that it's a 1/1 for 1, a 2/2 for 2, a 3/3 for 3, etc., etc. is very good, but the fact that it has reach, trample, and protection for multicolored makes this thing a Hydroid Graces killer. Not only that, but it also hits things like Aurelia and a bunch of other things as well. This card is going to be very powerful, and it's going to be one of those ones that allows us to swing in for a bunch of damage or leave it up for blocks if we really need it, and we can play it on curve at any time. It's a very good card. It's going to see a lot of play. Folio of Fancies, 1 in a blue artifact. Players have no maximum hand size. XX tap it. Each player draws X cards. 2 in a blue tap it. Each opponent puts a number of cards equal to the number of cards in their hand from the top of their library into their graveyard. Now this could be something really cool if we run it with something like Rule of Law to give yourself kind of like an arcane laboratory type of a thing. So your opponents can only cast 1 spell, technically everyone can only cast 1 spell per turn, but you're just flooding their hand with more and more and more cards. And then eventually, once they get to like 10, 12, 15 cards at hand, you can start milling them for 15 cards at a time for only 3 mana. Seems really powerful, and I'm curious to know if anyone can make something like that work. Dance of the Manse, X white and blue. Return up to X target artifact and or non-aura enchantment cards, each with converted mana cost X or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. This is a very powerful card. Reminds me very much of like an Open the Vaults mixed with Starfield of Nyx. The ability that you can pay 8 mana into it and then get 6 things with converted mana cost 6 or less back to the graveyard, and they're 4/4s. Extremely powerful. Play this with something like Leyline of Anticipation. Yeah, you can cast it at instant speed. And in fact, Leyline works really well in a list like this because it's an enchantment. So I think there could be some play with something like a white-blue artifacts in enchantment control list, or maybe an Esper artifact enchantment control list. Then we're going to be hitting Theros up pretty soon, and Theros is very well known for having enchantment creatures, so I'm pretty excited for this card, especially when Theros drops. So I think it's one to definitely look out for. Vantress Gargoyle, 1 in the blue for a 5/4 with flying. It's an artifact creature that is a gargoyle, and it can't attack unless defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard, so basically threshold. And then Vantress Gargoyle can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in your hand. And then tap it, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard, so it fuels itself. This card is going to be one of those ones that kind of reminds me of like, excuse me, kind of reminds me of like Jace's Phantasm. It can be a powerful card, but it's one of those ones that you're probably not going to be able to attack with it on turn 2 or turn 3. It's going to be more of a late game play. Maybe could see more play in something like Modern, considering that your opponents are likely going to be filling up their graveyards very quickly. So it might be one of those things that you could definitely be running it in something like that. But in Standard, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a trap card. You'll probably maybe bring it in as like a sideboard piece or something like that. Don't know if it's going to really see much Standard play, to be all honest. Bone Crusher Giant, 2 in red for a 4/3. It also has an adventure ability on it for Stomp for 1 in a red as an instant. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Stomp deals 2 damage to any target. And then the Bone Crusher Giant himself has, whenever it becomes the target of a spell, Bone Crusher Giant deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. So it can also target, that damage can also hit you as well if you target it. But the fact that it's a 4/3 means your opponent's likely going to be trying to remove it with something, which will allow you to deal 2 damage to your opponent. And if you have ways of keeping it around, by giving it indestructible or God's willing or anything like that, you definitely have the ability to keep dealing damage to your opponent as they try to remove it. And then the other half of this, the Stomp, it should not be discounted. The fact that it's an overcosted shock doesn't feel great, but the fact that damage can't be prevented this turn means that if you are going to be attacking with creatures and your opponent has protection from those creatures, when they go to block, the protection doesn't prevent the damage caused by those creatures. So, because the damage can't be prevented. So something like that is very good. I definitely think it's really good against something like Turbo Fog. If there's going to bring a seat and prevent any combat damage type things, it's going to be very good against those types of lists. I think this is definitely going to see play. This is definitely where red is probably going to be going. If you're going to be running more of that mid-range list, then this is really good. The Magic Mirror, 6 blue, legendary artifact. Now, don't get turned off by that mana cost. This spell costs 1 less for each card, for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. And then you have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a knowledge counter on it, and then draw a card for each knowledge counter on the Magic Mirror. So you can technically get this down for 3 blue, and then every turn after that, you put a knowledge counter on it, and you draw cards equal to that number of counters. So first it'll be 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, etc., etc. This card, it will probably see standard play. It's a very powerful card. It is a mythic, and I definitely think it's very powerful. Probably going to see more commander play than anything else, especially if you pair it with something like Paradoxical Outcome. Is that no Paradox Haze? Paradox Haze. I think that's it. Basically, no, that doubles an upkeep, right? No. Anyways, the whole point is that you want to be doubling your upkeep. So if you can do that, that'd be great. Otherwise, the spell is going to see play in something like control magic, mono blue control, white blue control, blue black control. Definitely see something like that. Maybe in Gadwick, where you want to be drawing a bunch of cards, casting blue spells. I think it's something to really look into. Revenge of the Ravens, 3 and a black. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's control loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You already have Kaya's, both of Kaya in the format as well. So pairing these 2 up together is going to be really good. You can also get this down on turn 3 if you're going to be running the Starfield Mystic, which reduces the cast of your enchantments by 1. So you can play that Starfield Mystic on turn 2, this on turn 3. You're already set for the races. So I definitely think there might be some sort of a white-black or Esper enchantments list running something like Revenge of Ravens in it. Iron Crag Feats, 1 red. Sorcery, adds 7 red to your mana pool. You can cast only 1 more spell this turn. This card is very powerful. Very powerful. This represents a turn 3 6 mana Chandra in the format. So you can play red source on turn 1, red-green source on turn 2 with a mana dork, and then on turn 3 you play another red source, you cast this, get 7 mana, then cast Chandra. So extremely powerful. There's also another card that's supposed to be working with it within limited, so we'll take a look at that when it shows up. But this is the kind of card that WotC doesn't typically print very often, and when they do, this is definitely a very powerful card. It's basically giving red mana ramp, which is fantastic. The other thing about this card too is if you build your deck right, it doesn't have to be a bad top deck. So if you're playing a lot of spells or permanents that have activated abilities, you can use that extra mana in those activated ability costs to get additional value. So something like that could be really good if you build your deck around it right. Mirror Maid, 1 blue for an enchantment. You may have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield. I can't believe they printed this card. It's basically copy artifact and copy enchantment on one card. It's a very powerful card. There's going to be so many combo potentials. EDH players are going to have a heyday with this thing. Modern can definitely see some good play with this. It's a very powerful card. I am just floored by it. I think it's going to be very powerful when Theros comes in, and I'm excited to see where it takes us in standard for sure. Grumgully the Generous, 1 red-green for a 3/3. It's a goblin shaman, and each non-human creature that you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. This, excuse me, this is basically like a semi-lord, but it perma-buffs your creatures. So I definitely think that this may be a good contention for something like a goblin deck or an elf deck if you want to be running either of those. You could be running shamans if you really wanted to, but really goblins are probably going to have the better synergy with one another. There are more goblins that have been printed, so I think this might be something to consider for something like those lists. Not to mention just building a non-human tribal list. It's going to be very easy in red and green, and it honestly should be something you should consider. Not to mention running it with the things with +1/+1 counter synergies like Incubation Druid or the Growth Chamber Guardian. All of those will work really well with Grumgully, and I think that could be a really powerful deck if you build it right. Sundering Stroke, 6 in a red. This is that one I was telling you about with the Iron Crag feat. It deals 7 damage, divide as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 targets. If at least 7 red mana was spent to cast the spell, instead it deals 7 damage to each of those permanents and or players. I think this is going to be a staple in red commander decks for sure. It's going to see some play in Brawl. The fact that you can end up dealing 7 damage in a mono red list to each player should not be discounted. If you run this with something like Neheb, you pay 7 mana, you deal 21 damage to your opponents, you get 21 red mana on your second main phase. Very powerful stuff. So I think that's probably where we're going to see it more. It's not like a true sweeper where it sweeps the board. It only hits just a few targets. But so I don't think it's going to see a ton of standard play. But I think, you know, if you build around it right, maybe if you're copying it or something like that, you know, we do have Ral still in the format. Ral could definitely tick down. You can copy this twice and deal 14 damage to a player, and then 7 damage among 4 other permanents. I mean, that could be game ending. So definitely think that this is something to consider if you build around it right. But as it stands by itself, I don't think it's that great. Fires of Invention, 3 in a red enchantment. You can cast spells only during your turn, and you can't cast any more than 2 spells each turn. And then you may cast spells with converted mana costs less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying the mana cost. This card, I think, is a lot better than people are giving credit for. The fact that you can circumvent the mana, casting the spells by using the mana. You basically get to have mana ramp in red. That's basically what this does. It does turn off your sorcery speed stuff, but if you build around it right, like maybe you play Rule of Law or Deafening Silence or something like that, and you make it less of a one-sided effect, I think you can actually build a really fun person-style deck with this, allowing you to use your lands for activated abilities and other mana sinks. And then maybe you win the game with planeswalkers and other enchantments and artifacts and things like that. I think this is a powerful card, and I'm definitely going to be building a fun deck around it. Check out this week's podcast over at the main phase to see a more in-depth build around this type of a card. Clockwork Servant, for 3 colors, you have a 2/3 artifact creature gnome, and it has adamant, and if at least 3 mana of the same color was spent to cast the spell, you draw a card. This card is very powerful. Usually we see these as 3-mana 1/1s, and they usually either 2-2 or land or something like that. We did see one recently that did draw us a card, but the fact that this is a 2/3 for 3 mana that draws us a card in monocolor strategies, or if we're able to just stick with 3 specific colors, I think is actually very powerful. So I'm excited to see this in Standard. I definitely think this will see play. Especially in lists that are just looking to try to cycle through their decks and wanting to have kind of a beefier body, especially ones where artifacts may matter. This is going to see play in those types of strategies for sure. Giant Opportunity, 2 and a green. You may sacrifice 2 food. If you do, create a 7/7 green giant creature token. Otherwise, create 3 food tokens. So the fact that you get a 7/7 for 3 mana if you sacrifice 2 food is amazing. The other thing about this too is the sacrifice of the food is on resolution of the spell, not as an additional casting cost. So you can decide if it resolves if you want to sacrifice your food to get a 7/7, or if you want to create 3 more food. The other thing too about this as well is your opponent will have to respond to the spell by destroying one of your foods if you only have 2 to prevent you from creating a 7/7. They can't do it once the spell has resolved. So it's a very important thing to remember that this card is going to be very powerful. It's definitely going to be a staple in that food strategy for sure. Very, very powerful. We also have Archon of Absolution, 3 and a white. It's an Archon with flying, protection from white. Creatures can't attack you or planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures, and it's a 3/2 with flying. This card is really good for an uncommon. It's got protection from white, so it already has some solid stats, being a 3/2 flyer for 4 with protection. Incredibly powerful, and the fact that it prevents your opponents from attacking you or planeswalker you control unless they pay 1, taxes them like none other. So this is going to be a very good addition to the Standard format, probably as a sideboard card if anything else. And I'm excited to see some sort of like a white prison strategy enter the fray, and I think it'll be really, really cool. Torbrand, Thane of Red Fell, 1 red, red, red. This is the red version of all of the 3-mana, 3-color specific mana legends. This guy is extremely powerful. He's a legendary creature, Dwarf Noble. If a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. It's a 2/4. So basically this is a 4/4. Basically. And then it basically turns, it gives you like the ultimate of what the Flame of Keld did. Is also right on curve if you want to play the newish 5-mana Jaya, which would add an additional point of damage to everything there. But this is definitely at the top end of like Cavalcade. So in Cavalcade, if you're swinging in with a bunch of 1/1s, well, those 1/1s will now deal 3 damage whenever they finally get to the damage point. But then each Cavalcade trigger will be dealing 3 damage. That's a lightning strike or a lightning bolt for just attacking with this guy on the battlefield. And with Cavalcade, very, very powerful. And I definitely think this is where red is going to be going. If you're going to be playing a very fast, aggressive red strategy, it's going to be Torbrand for sure. I would pick up your copies right away. He's very, very good. Drown in the Lock, blue-black for an instant. Choose 1 counter-target spell with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard, or destroy target creature with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in its controller's graveyard. So, important to note, this is really bad if there's no graveyards, right? So, but other than that, this is a 2-mana counter spell and a 2-mana destroy target creature spell all in one. People have been calling it this set's Fatal Push, and I can see why. It's an incredibly powerful uncommon. It's going to make waves in Modern. It's definitely going to be a staple in Standard, especially if you build around it right. I think this is something you should definitely consider. Maybe not a full play set of. Kind of like an Assassin's Trophy type thing, right? It's not going to be a full play set, but it'll definitely give you some added ability if you're running 2 copies of it, something like that. I think it's going to be very good. Yorvo. For 3 green, you have a Noble Giant. Whenever he enters the battlefield, he enters the battlefield with 4+1/+1 counters on it. He's a 0/0 normal. Whenever a green creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on Yorvo. Then, if that creature's power is greater than Yorvo's, put another +1/+1 counter on Yorvo. So, this guy could get huge really fast, especially if you're going to be running something like Saprolings or something like that. I know Saprolings are leaving the format at the moment, which is probably why they're printing this guy now. However, if we have any other token generator in green, this guy can be really, really powerful. In fact, we do have Izoni right now, which is a great addition to something like this. As excuse me, sorry, a great addition to something like this for a 6 mana top end to just grow this guy out of control. And the fact that you can get him down to 4/4 on the next turn, you can play something that's 5/4. He gets 2 +1/+1 counters. Is extremely, extremely powerful. This guy can easily get up to like 10 power or more. Extremely, extremely powerful. He doesn't have trample or anything like that, but there's ways to give that to him, or to give him some other form of evasion, like flying. This guy will be amazing. He's going to be a mean green staple moving forward. Very, very good. Linden, the Steadfast Queen. This is the white version of these creatures, 3 white, and then you have it's a Vigilance, and then whenever a white creature you control attacks, you gain 1 life, and it's a 3/3, so it already will gain you 1 life whenever she attacks. But this works really well in like 12 Pridemate, right? So you're playing a Johnny's Pridemate on turn 2, you play this on turn 3, you swing in, you gain a life, and then a Johnny's Pridemate swings in as a 3/3, and then on turn 4, you 4 or 5, you play the new Johnny, and you can tick down to put in another Pridemate, and then it just spirals out of control, right? It's very, very good. So I think that this is definitely a contender in that white or white-black or white-green life gain strategy. And I definitely think it's something to build around for sure. It can definitely do some really, really powerful things for you. I don't think it's something you should necessarily leave behind or overlook. I think it can be very, very, very good for you for sure. Seer Alin, the Lion's Claw, 3 white for a 4/4 with first strike. This is the uncommon legendary creature cycle here for whites, and then whenever it attacks, other creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So it is an anthem whenever it attacks, and so it's a 4/4 with first strike, which is really good for 5 mana. And then again, that buff cannot be overstated. It is an anthem whenever it attacks. Very, very powerful. Imagine putting something like Helm of the Host on this. I believe Helm is rotating out, but if it wasn't, that'd be hilarious, right? But no, I think there could be some really good plays with this that you can build around. Maybe it's a good top end for like a white weenie or something like that, as it's got that anthem effect on it. Could be very, very powerful. Something like that. Black Lance Paragon, 1 in a black for a 3/1 with flash, human knight. When it enters the battlefield, target knight gains death touch and lifelink until end of turn. So you can target itself and use it as removal. You can target, say, the red knight that has first strike, the 1/1 for 1 that has first strike, to allow you to kill something with that, or just any other knight that is swinging in or blocking or anything like that. You can use this as a removal spell. Very, very powerful. I definitely think it's going to be a mainstay in the knight deck for sure. We also have Cauldron's Gift for 4 in a black. If 3 black mana were spent to cast the spell for its Adamant ability, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then you may choose a creature card in your graveyard. If you do, return it to the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. We already still have 2 other very powerful reanimation spells in the format, so this might be something to consider to supplement them for sure. I definitely think that this could be very, very powerful, especially since we're losing a bunch of pieces that mill ourselves. Having this ability to get the mill 4 on top of the bringing back a creature is going to be extremely good for us. The Cauldron of Eternity, 10 black. So 10 generic mana, black, for for a legendary artifact. This is the Black Legendary Artifact series here. And it costs 2 less to cast for each creature card in your graveyard. And then whenever a creature you control dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library, and then for 2 and a black, you can tap, pay 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. So, how you want to build around this is self-mill. You mill yourself, you mill yourself, you mill yourself. And then, once you get to 5 creatures, you can then cast this for 2 black mana. Very, very powerful. After that, you can then pay 2 and a black immediately and tap it and pay 2 life to bring back one of those big bombs in your graveyard. And then if it dies, it just goes to the bottom of your library. And then you can always tutor it up with other tutor effects that we have in the format and bring it back to your hand. Otherwise, as long as you just mill yourself over and over again, you will always have targets for this card. So I definitely think that it's going to be a very powerful card, and the fact that you can pay, it's basically 5 mana over the course of 2 turns, but having this repeatable effect, paying 3 and then tap it and pay 2 life to return something, and then you can always untap this with so untap artifact type of effects to then do this again, so you can potentially reanimate upwards of 2 things a turn, maybe even more than that if you have the mana for it. I think is very, very powerful. And then lastly, the last one we're going to talk about here is Overwhelmed Apprentice for 1 blue and 1/2 human wizard. And then whenever Overwhelmed Apprentice enters the battlefield, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard, and then you scry 2. This is extremely powerful, especially if you can double it up with something like Yarok. In Commander, you have like Flame Shadow Conjuring and Anala. Both of those work really, really well with this, given that this is a wizard and it has enter the battlefield effects. And this is just a really solid card in Standard. We've seen 1 mana enters the battlefield, scry 2 before, and that did see some play. This also has the ability that mills your opponent. It is very, very powerful. I'm surprised it's an uncommon. I'm surprised they're printing an uncommon of this caliber. I think it's very, very good in Standard, and especially since there seems to be like a mill deck shaping up, I think this can be an integral piece to it. Well, folks, that's all I have for you today. Again, my name is Debo over at lansego.com. I appreciate you guys checking out the spoilers here. Be sure to check back again tonight, tomorrow, whenever we can get the next one up. We appreciate you guys and your support. Can't do this without you. Again, my name is Debo, lansego.com. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.